Monty Lutz.
Thank you. Have you been sworn as witness?
Yes, I have.
All right, fine. Thank you. Just have a seat.
Mr. Lutz, in '78, you were one of the firearms experts chosen from around the country by the House Select Committee on Assassinations to re-examine the firearm evidence in the Kennedy case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lutz, I want you to identify, if you can, certain items of evidence I'm going to put on the screen. Exhibit 130. What's that?
This is the what was Commission Exhibit 399, or the Conley stretcher bullet, caliber 6.5.
You examined this bullet personally?
Yes, I did.
Was there any indication at the archives where this bullet was found, you say?
It was indicated to have come from the stretcher of Governor Conley.
At Parkland Memorial Hospital?
Yes, sir.
Was it your finding that the Conley stretcher bullet was fired from Oswald's Carcano rifle to the exclusion of all other weapons?
That is true.
Did you look at a photograph of two damaged bullet fragments, that's two bullet fragments found in the front seat of the limousine?
Yes, I did.
Your panel conducted a comparison microscope examination of these two fragments?
Yes, we did.
And the findings?
Findings were that each of the fragments were fired through the rifle, or the Oswald rifle.
Exhibit 120. For the record, this is a photograph of the three casings as they were found near the 6th floor window shortly after the assassination of the book depository building. Did your firearm panel conduct a comparison microscope examination of these casings?
Yes, we did.
And what were your findings?
Our findings were that all three cartridge cases had been fired in the bolt-action rifle CE 139.
That's Oswald's Carcano rifle?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lutz, there has been evidence at this trial that the assassin fired 3 shots from the 6th floor window of the book depository building, 2 of which hit President Kennedy. There's been further evidence that the time interval between the first and third shots was 8.2 seconds. Now, you have personally fired Oswald's Carcano, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
Would you describe the operational capability of Oswald's Carcano rifle to the jury?
The capabilities would be very capable of hitting targets at relatively short distances, up to 300 yards. So it has the capability of being fired quite rapidly at those distances.
In other words, not a great rifle, but an efficient rifle. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you feel only an expert marksman could aim and fire 3 shots from Oswald's Carcano in 8.2 seconds?
No, I do not.
Would it be very easy?
Quite easy, yes.
Mr. Lutz, I have a tougher question for you. The evidence has shown that the interval between the first and second shots may, and I italicize the word may, have been as low as just over 2 seconds. Given the fact that the Carcano requires the operation of the bolt between shots, is it feasible to fire, operate the bolt, aim and fire again in just over 2 seconds with that Carcano?
Yes, it would be very possible.
Mr. Lutz, going back to the possibility of firing 3 shots with the Carcano with a reasonable degree of accuracy within 8.2 seconds, in May of this year, did I ask you to attempt to duplicate what Oswald did? That is, fire 1 shot and then 2 more within 8.2 seconds.
Yes, you did.
You used a 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano.
That is correct.
Not Oswald's, obviously.
No, sir.
What firing conditions and targets did you set up?
I placed 3 targets, one at 57 yards, one at 72 yards, and one at 87 yards from the firing point. I then proceeded to fire 5 sequence shots, 3 shots each at those targets, and record the time that it required to fire all of the targets.
And what were the results of your test?
The results were that I was able to hit 2 of those 3 targets at the 57 and 87 yard distances. The second target I missed because of the rapid repeating of the fire on all of the shots except one. So one time I hit all 3 targets in 3.6 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Lutz. No further questions.
Tell us your name and where you live.
Last name is Guinn, G-U-I-N-N. First name Vincent, middle name Perry. I live in the San Diego area, California.
Okay. Your occupation?
I'm a professor of chemistry at the University of California in Irvine.
Thank you, Doctor. You taught a course in neutron activation analysis at the University of California at Irvine. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you've given testimony many times in a court of law on your analysis of the elemental composition of bullets.
Yes.
What is the usual purpose of trying to ascertain the elemental composition of a bullet or bullet fragment?
to ascertain whether two evidence specimens were produced or were not produced in the same melt or batch of lead.
Okay. Did you conduct a neutron activation analysis of the bullet and bullet fragment evidence in the Kennedy assassination at the request of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, Doctor?
Yes, I did.
Dr. Gwynn, were you able to determine what type of ammunition these bullet and bullet fragments were?
All of these were in the range of composition, a rather unusual range of compositions that I had already found were characteristic of the Western Cartridge Company 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano cartridge bullets.
Do you conclude that CE-842, the Connolly wrist fragments, came from CE-399, the Connolly stretcher bullet?
Yes, I do.
And CE-843, the fragments removed from President Kennedy's brain, CE-840, the fragments found on the rear floor of the limousine, and CE-567, the fragment found on the front seat, all came from the same bullet?
Yes, I do.
So there's no evidence that more than two bullets hit anyone or anything inside the presidential limousine?
That's correct, and there is solid evidence that there were two.
Doctor, you're aware that firearms experts have concluded that the Connolly stretcher bullet was fired from Oswald's Carcano rifle. Is that correct?
Yes.
You're also aware that firearms experts have concluded that the two large bullet fragments found on the front seat of the presidential limousine, one of which you analyzed, were also fired from Oswald's Carcano rifle. Is that correct?
Yes.
What you're saying is that from your neutron activation analysis, there may have been 50 people firing at President Kennedy that day. Is that correct? But if there were, they all missed. Only bullets fired from Oswald's Carcano rifle hit the president. Is that correct?
That's a correct statement, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Gwynn. No further questions.
Tell us your name, please.
My name is Lyndall L. Shaneyfelt.
And where do you live?
I live in Alexandria, Virginia.
Thank you.
Mr. Shaneyfelt, as I understand it, you were the photographic expert who testified before the Warren Commission in 1964 on the assassination of President Kennedy. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you were employed by the FBI at that time?
Yes.
But even way back then, you were working as a question document examiner for the FBI. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
correct.
correct.
Does the field of question documents include handwriting identification?
That is correct, yes.
Mr. Shaneyfelt, in this case, did you have an opportunity to examine documents purportedly written by Lee Harvey Oswald as well as known exemplars of his writing?
Yes, I did.
And where did you examine the documents?
In the National Archives in Washington, D.C.
Exhibit 167. Now on the screen is a photograph of a Klein's sporting goods order form for a 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano rifle with a telescopic sight and an envelope addressed to Klein's store dated March the 12th, 1963. Is this one of the question documents you examined?
Yes, I identified all of the handwriting on the envelope, including the A. Heidel return address and the writing on the clipping for the order for the rifle as being the handwriting and handprinting of Lee Harvey Oswald.
So Oswald wrote the word, or the words, or the name A. Heidel. Is that correct?
Yes, he did.
Exhibit 174. Mr. Shaneyfelt, was one of the documents you examined and determined to be in Oswald's handwriting called an historic diary.
Yes, it was.
And it is a 12-page diary?
Yes.
And you have it with you today?
Yes.
You're honored to give the jury an insight into the thinking of the accused. I'd like to have certain passages of the diary and other writings of Mr. Oswald read to the jury at this time. Mr. Shaneyfelt, the first entry in the historic diary is dated October 16, 59, where Oswald refers to arriving in Moscow from Helsinki. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Does the October 21st entry contain a reference to Oswald attempting suicide?
Yes, it does.
Would you read excerpts from this entry?
Yes. He writes, Eve, 6. Receive word from official police. I must leave country tonight at 8 p.m. as visa expires. I am shocked. My dream shattered because of a petty official. 7 p.m. I decide to end it. Soak wrist in cold water to numb pain, then slash my wrist. He goes on to say, about 8, Rima finds me unconscious. She screams and runs for help, and then goes on to state that the ambulance came and he was taken to a hospital.
Is there this language in the October 31st, 1959 entry? Quote, my mind is made up from this day forward. I consider myself no citizen of the USA.
Yes.
I take it, Mr. Shaneyfelt, you have read the entire diary.
Yes, I have.
Exhibit 178 was another document you examined and determined to be in Oswald's handwriting, a November the 8th, 1959 letter to Robert Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald's brother, written from Russia.
Yes.
Would you please read the second paragraph of this letter?
I have been told that I will not have to leave the Soviet Union if I do not care to. This then is my decision. I will not leave this country, the Soviet Union, under any conditions. I will never return to the United States, which is a country I hate.
Exhibit 179 was another document you examined and determined to be in Oswald's handwriting, a letter dated November the 26th, 1959, from Oswald, again to his brother Robert, written from the Hotel Metropole in Moscow.
Yes.
Does page 2 contain these words? I want you to understand what I say now. I do not say lightly or unknowingly, since I have been in the military, as you know, and I know what war is like. In the event of war, I would kill any American who put a uniform on in defense of the American government. Any American.
Yes, that was written by Oswald.
Mr. Schoenfeld, in any of the documents you examined in this case, did you find any evidence of disguise or forgery?
No, I did not.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schoenfeld. No further questions.